Well, unlike the last episode, we are coming into today's conversation with a bit more intention and a plan of action for the topics we want to tackle.
Some would say it's our intention and plan of action is very relevant to what someone might be experiencing for this kind of content we're going to talk about.
Are you trying to tell me you're looking for a girlfriend, Graeme?
Adam, how could you be so presumptuous?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of the Pluto podcast, where today Graeme and I will be discussing dating, connection, and what it means to find romance in a city like Toronto.
Because apparently we are the experts.
All right, well, we can dive into some, meaty stats and facts and figures, such as what I think gave rise to this topic, which was how
Yeah, and I mean, I guess this is just something that we talk a lot about, or I shouldn't say we talk a lot about Pluto. We talk about at Pluto as this like indirect effect that kind of we see is that when we're putting together, a community of people, and our average, I would say like average user, our average member, our average participant, there's someone who joins, they're joining our space single or solo. Not everyone is single, of course. They might be in partnership, but they join Pluto as an individual. And that's actually just something we've seen almost across the board. There's very few couples who've joined together. Now I think about it. Maybe only like a handful total out of our 200 members. And so a lot of our members are joining as, themselves as independents, as, just representing, being in the, showing up to Pluto as who they are. And just so happens a chunk of these people are single. And so one thing I guess that we always are curious about, it's kind of like this sort of like, I don't know, it's like the fun game we play in the background is like, who's matching with who? Where are the vibes? Who's got vibes, right? And we've been like fortunate to actually see that play out with a few members. And, and that's, we talk about this being like, man, like how cool if one of our KPIs was like how many babies are birthed because of Pluto, right? Like it's such a interesting thing. Like we, in this world where, what we'll talk about today, I'm sure is like, this world that's driving towards more disconnection, more loneliness, going on a date, right, is freaking getting more and more expensive as like inflation's rising. We were just listening to this CNBC article or YouTube, whatever, where they were literally just talking about how, people dating today, they're more risk adverse. They don't want to spend money if they don't know the person. And so how Pluto sort of is in a weird, odd way that I guess we didn't really anticipate, but we're kind of seeing play out in real time. People are meeting like-minded people here. It's kind of outperforming, in our very small pool so far, what has otherwise been like, the industry's been driven by like online dating in the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Plutonic,
if you will. And I think it's also worth mentioning too, like, and then maybe the limited information you get on someone's profile. And then from there, maybe striking up a conversation, which who knows? I'm obviously not on these dating apps because I'm happily engaged right now.
We love you, Chelsea.
I would only imagine the amount of guys, potentially women, that are now asking ChatGPT for what to say to get this person to be interested in me.
Right.
And how sad is that,
right?
to lose touch with those innate faculties that humans have cultivated over millennia to learn how to relate, how to select and find a mate, to then procreate. Here's my fucking rhyme, part of my French.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah. So all I have to say, it's, I just have a lot of, sympathy to those out in the world, wanting to find a partner. Or I even just think about in my own experience too, my last relationship, I didn't have any friends around me either. I didn't have any like real close people, and how much of the energy got sucked out of my romantic partner, my girlfriend at the time, because she was there to be my friend and my girlfriend and my everything.
Right.
And I think really deep down, what I was looking for more than anything was connection, but I tried to seek all of that through her.
Right. And
the issue there was that sucked the life force out of the relationship.
Yeah.
And what an issue that is when, we are limited creatures. And so I don't, personal philosophy is that our romantic partners should not be our everythings, because otherwise that creates a significant level of dependency and almost exhaustion that is probably unhealthy. And why I think actually starting by being in community, having a good friend group, a good selection of people that you can just be with and absolve that, longing for. And then maybe one of those people might emerge as someone you have a thing for, or letting romance be the emergent property, not like the heat-seeking missile kind of thing.
Right.
So, yeah, obviously my 2 cents, by no means a dating expert here or intimacy expert, but obviously we've spent just a lot of time researching stuff and thinking about it on what it means to be intimate.
Right.
Not just romantically, but here at Pluto, one of the things we're really trying to look at is, intimacy is the new luxury. Intimacy being just that sense of proximity to others, that soul to soul, human to human level of connection. I'll pause there because actually it could go on another rant, but I want to give you some space to.
No, I mean, it's all good. And I was just sort of reflecting as you were talking there, just on taking it back to the dating app culture, right? Because that's prevalent today. That's what we're seeing, in a post-COVID world, right? Is the majority of romantic connections are being made through apps. Not all, of course, but a lot of them, let's say.
And there's nothing wrong with the ones that are.
Right.
And I also want to make sure that this isn't like a poo on
the apps.
The apps, because I know many awesome couples that have met through them.
Yeah.
But it's for those that have not found that success and are finding themselves fatigued from what I was talking about with the desensitization, if you will. Yeah,
the swipe culture. And I guess that is a real thing, right? Dating app fatigue. We didn't come up with that term. That's clearly in the ether right now. A lot of people are talking about that. And it's interesting, I guess. And it started before the dating apps. I even think back to when I was young, on MSN Messenger, trying to work my, oh man, there's some stories there. But just trying to, connect. Let's keep it PG. I'm just trying to connect, right? And get to know someone. And there was beauty in that because, I was shy and awkward in real life, but when I was on MSN, suddenly I could just
what was your MSN username?
Oh my God, we're not going there. Okay, I'll tell you, it was, this is embarrassing. Triumph and tragedy. With all the
Is that talking about
buddy
dating?
Shit. Okay, what was yours? Come on, you gotta give it now.
Bored fanatic.
Bored fanatic.
Wakeboard fanatic. Triumph and tragedy is way more embarrassing.
Well, only.
So imagine being your username triumphanttragedy@hotmail.com and trying to flirt with women. Yeah. So is this going to be a triumphant pursuit or a tragic one?
I thought it was, I was very, very cool, I guess, but no.
It was cool.
It's, but I mean, like, so the forums, the online space, like that started many, many years ago, like decades ago almost now we're getting up to. Damn, it's been a while. But yeah, and so bringing it into more the forefront today, and back then you still had to put in the work, right? You still had to like get to know someone, and you were seeing that person in real life. So you couldn't. There wasn't the full disconnect between digital and IRL. Mm-hmm. The difference maybe today is you're getting served people that you might never meet IRL, and so then you're playing kind of this game where you're really showing yourself digitally even before there's a chance you'll meet them physically. And then so much energy goes into that, so much time goes into that, you invest into that.
Yeah. And
then you sit down across from the person in a coffee shop meeting for the first time, and within seconds you're like, shit, the vibe's off.
Totally.
And that's exhausting.
And I mean, the coffee shop is probably a great starting point rather than like the dinner, because you think about the dollars and cents component of this, when, a coffee can be innocent. It's like, $10 if you include a pastry. But then like maybe another day you go for dinner, and now you're like $100 in. Third day, like 200, 300, like.
I mean, dinner these days,
I know, man.
A lot more than $100.
And so just thinking of, one of the reasons why in that CNBC video, they were talking about why millennials are dating less is also because it's quite cost prohibitive to explore.
Right.
And, that's a really unfortunate and sad reason for people not to be in relationship or to even be in friendships with people, that it's just expensive to live.
Yeah. And I can imagine like for many people, like probably their ability to expand their network has been reliant on these apps, and I mean, maybe they do have core friends and so forth. But so I'm really talking more in the expansive term, like wanting to like network out, meet new people. I mean, the apps used to really play a big role in that. Mm-hmm. And now in order to expand that network, it's going to cost them $200 a night to go out. Right. And so that starts to become also friction. And I can imagine that's frustrating. And I can imagine a lot of people just being like, I can't do this anymore. Like financially, I can't do this, but also it's just like, it's not nourishing me anymore.
Energetically, it can leave people truly uninspired.
Right. And, and I mean, obviously we're extremely biased, but like the beautiful thing about community spaces, and we didn't even like invent this, right? Like this is, again, traditionally community space has been around forever, but they typically are already a curated group of like-minded individuals that you can just drop in on. And I liked what you said earlier, where you're like, the heat-seeking missile shouldn't be like, I'm coming in to date, because there's nothing more of an ick than someone coming at you, like full on, full force. But, and I think that's like just a skill or talent that maybe this, people forgot, which is like
courting,
playfulness, like, getting to know someone before like assuming that you guys are going to be lifelong lovers, or you're going to even end up in bed together.
Totally. And that's, again, like, don't want this to feel like a total sales page for Pluto, but like
it's a sales pitch for Pluto. No,
that's the reality of, like, I think on that like topic of courting, where rather than with dating apps and dating culture where it's like swipe, boom, like this might be my person. Whereas in a community space where it can be, hey, we're like in the same space together. Now maybe we're going to similar events together, which would indicate we have a shared interest or shared curiosity for something. And now that you've even just been in the same room with someone, maybe not even said words, but you're already building this energetic trust and familiarity with someone that doesn't even need to have been spoken out. But you think of that level of intimacy and that level of trust that gets created just from being in the same spaces as someone, and then let alone being at similar events and sharing experiences, which is also part of how we form social bonds. That is a foundation for connection versus, oh, that person's attractive. Maybe let's see if they want to, catch a cocktail.
Yeah.
Like 10 times out of 10, I'm going to bet on the downstairs, we're upstairs at Pluto. Like the real life connection stuff. And which again reminds me of when we were doing the customer interviews with people before Pluto even became Pluto.
Right.
And just asking people like, what's frustrating you in life right now? Like what are you struggling with? And
what's your pain points?
And it was connection. And then when I pulled on that thread a little bit more and more, it was actually the dating connection and not being able to meet a person they want, and particularly even still struggling to meet someone in real life. So I think where Pluto's, interesting is, I spoke to a lot of people, like I think 4 people mentioned this, that they were joining things like run clubs.
Right. Yeah.
Not because they liked running, but because they wanted to meet someone in real life.
Yeah,
and
with some similar values.
Yeah. I mean, one person was like, I hate running, but I'm joining a run club because I want to meet someone in real life.
Yeah. And
run clubs have kind of been the only thing. And that's where, I still think great spaces like, Pluto's, like Other Ship's amazing, like other wellness experiences are great places for people to just meet others. But again, you don't want to come in with this like, I'm going to drop in, I'm going to try and meet someone.
Yeah.
I really celebrate places like Other Ship that are having like singles nights.
Yeah.
Because I think there's also so much to be said about creating the container of safety where, okay, it's okay to express a desire.
Yeah.
But like you said, there has to be that foundation of trust built in. And I think that's where, by being a curated, membership-driven place, like what our job is so much, it's ensuring that people are coming in with integrity and without having any of that ickiness that might turn people off.
Yeah. And there's an interesting layer that we haven't touched yet, but I think is actually so important for connection, which is the personal development side of it. Because all of us, right, we all have our stuff. We have our shadows, we have our baggage, we have our whatever, right? Our traumas,
I don't have anything.
Yeah, well, Chelsea's a lucky woman. But I mean, that's just, indicative of being human. We carry shit. Yeah. And that's just conditioning and whatever, and that's a whole story unto itself. But I think why it's important in context of relating is that, oftentimes that shit gets triggered when we relate. And what's really nice about spaces, communities, Pluto, but others as well, like, I think of even like tantric communities, in that world, right? And
consent culture,
right? And that's a different sphere altogether. We're not, Pluto is not a tantric community, just to be very clear about that. But what I think the through line is that these are spaces where personal development and growth mindset are favored. And if not, that is part of what the culture is. And when you're in a space that favors or prioritizes personal development, you're in real time working through your stuff, your blockages, your friction, your fears, your uncertainties, your doubts with others, in community with others. And when you're connecting with someone, you're not just, it's no longer surface level connection. They're seeing more of you. They're seeing this vulnerability in you, even before it becomes romantic, oftentimes. And if that is the intention for romance, and 2 people are wanting to engage in that way, there is also this like awareness that you're entering a relationship, which is like, oh, we both value personal development. We're both maybe have our little codependency things that we want to work through together. And I really think that's actually what will strengthen the relationship in the long run. Is like you're already entering, it's like the seeds of how we enter the relationship will either aid in the success or failure of the relationship. And so if we're entering the relationship wanting to grow, wanting to be less codependent and more interdependent, more healthy in our communication styles, more healthy in our attachment styles, and that's the base where we're meeting each other at. I think that's really what's going to drive a much healthier and long-lasting relationship in the end.
I think so. And I think there's, something to be said there too about the safety created too with things like the Connection Council that we've implemented.
So you'll have to explain what the Connection Council is in the Pluto context.
So here at Pluto, what we found early on, this was back in February, kind of preempted like what the month of romance and connection will likely bring up in people, which is, I think it's amazing that we have people here at Pluto coming together. Like friction is not a bad thing. People meeting, new friendships, new relationships, new business partnerships. But just because we are having experiences where people are conjoining doesn't mean they always work out. And that doesn't have to be a catastrophe. And that's where the Connection Council came into place, where we preempted that there's a good chance that'll happen in February when things are sensitive around the romantic stuff particularly. So our Connection Council is a Jedi Council, if you will, of I think 8 members that are varying professionals, from psychotherapists to intimacy coaches, relationship coaches, space holders.
Probably the ones that should be giving this talk right now.
Probably. Make a note to bring at least one of them on as a guest to really go deep onto this, rather than doing a little armchair expertise that we are. And the reason being is, so much of what a healthy community represents to us is a place where you can safely experiment. So experiment in a relationship, experiment in a friendship, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean you'll be ostracized. It doesn't mean that one or both of you have to leave, that there is a place where rupture can also have repair, and then a safe re-entry to be held here without judgment and feel like there's probably some personal development realized along the way. And to your point, I think that's actually one of the most beautiful things about a place like Pluto, that really celebrates that ongoing evolution of the members.
Yeah.
It's not expected. I don't think we ever market as like a place for personal development, but it kind of just happens naturally when one's in that pursuit of authentic embodiment.
Right.
Which that is something we do really champion and celebrate. And I think why things like the Connection Council and why just there's so much space holding that seems to be happening is because it's a very vulnerable process to reveal parts of ourselves that we haven't yet shared with the world. And I think a lot about this as it pertains to loneliness and disconnect, beyond the superficial parts of it, but to really solve for profound loneliness. I think it's why it takes us to do the inner work. If you've ever heard the saying, you can only meet someone as deeply as you've met yourself. So if we're meeting ourselves on these new layers of new interests, new desires, new parts of the shadow that haven't been shared yet, it can be extremely vulnerable to bring that out and share with the community. Just to acknowledge it for oneself can sometimes be like, whoa. But then to bring it out in their first grief circle or in the men's circle or as a founder to bring up our vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
But then the beauty is when that part is brought to the surface and witnessed, that witnessing is what solves for the loneliness, because now it's like this part isn't just tucked away, this part is being seen.
Yeah.
And then when it's being seen by others who have also met their profound depths, that is like the real meat of connection.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I was actually talking about this with someone recently where, we tend to hide the parts of ourselves that we feel are the most unlovable, as our own sort of coping way to cope, and the irony is that when we, especially in partnership, when we expose those parts, that's what creates more connection, more intimacy. That's what makes people, that's really can bond people more deeply.
That's right.
Yeah, and in the one thing you also mentioned about the pods, because that's also something I don't know if we've talked about yet, but I think it plays a really important role in intimacy in Pluto, which is what pods are, these groups, and it's all member driven, so members can create pods. We have the men's circle pod, we have the women's circle pod, we have an entrepreneur pod, we have the grieving circle pod. I think there's even a pod right now they're going through The Artist's Way, the book, the 12-week program. And so pods can come in many forms. It doesn't always have to be so, intimate, or I don't know. But the idea being that you're with a small group of people going deeper into some sort of passion, interest, or expansion. And that allows for those opportunities not just to be seen, but to create continuity, that you're seeing these same people every week or every 2 weeks. They're part of this larger community, but it's like this small,
It's like being back at school, right?
Right.
Like high school or university where, there's people in your class, and then maybe there's like the clubs, and they're also interested in this thing. And I think it's just a very natural way to cultivate connection or interest, where we're looking for similarities in others. We're also looking for like polarization, but I would not be surprised if 2 people in the artist's pod hung out even outside of the pod, because it's just a place to build that connection of familiarity. And
Absolutely.
Without that friendship beyond the pod needing to go to romance, that's still just a perfect example of like cool people, shared interest, let's keep the conversation going, and boom, like friendship is just this natural emergent property that we're just creating such an environment for.
Absolutely.
And then maybe there'll be some romance.
So it's interesting, like, and maybe just to like, bring it back to the romance part, because that is the theme of today. Where have you seen success, or where have you seen like members, maybe think of like one couple, I don't know, two couples, like where have you seen them really like thrive in this environment, in their connection, in their romance, and how might that show up in different ways as they relate to Pluto?
Since we don't have like permission, or like I don't want to name names yet because that could just be a little bit could be private.
Yeah.
But where I've seen couples thrive have been in the participation in a variety of experiences at Pluto together. So couples that have maybe done a community dinner together, done a dance together, done a breath work, done a sound bath, have spent the time, in the space across not just a singular, but a variety. I think for any relationship is actually, you're going to have the most success because you're having multiple different contexts to share in, or to like, let's say Chelsea and I went to an event together and it was like, that kind of sucked. Not that really happens, but
Never at Pluto,
but it's happened in other things we've done. It's at least we're both sharing in that emotion, that feeling towards something. So I think it's less even about the experience itself, but more about the variety and the novelty of experiences people can participate in together that now becomes something we share.
Right.
And have a shared experience from, whether it's a growth or just pure play, or hey, that was like a really weird thing. Like, let's not do that again. Yeah. And it's still, that adds to the relationship.
And I'm thinking about one couple particularly because they did an event recently. I think it was like a Thai massage event together, and
co-created together.
Co-create, right? And how intimate is a co-creation with your partner? Being seen by, a community, right? And like being seen in this, like, I almost want to say in like a power position, a leadership position, right? You're guiding a group, you're facilitating a group. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's intimate.
Absolutely. And that's again, being seen for the different parts, being seen as a couple, being seen in community.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that people, when there's no judgment, I think it's really important. And especially when entering a new relationship or even when trying something out, that there could be a fear of being seen in a trial, which I think we could probably, stand pretty proudly in saying, like, we create as judgment-free space as possible for people to just, again, try things on. A place to be who you actually are.
And so I think we would be remiss not to talk about maybe like the third part of this. We started with like meeting at Pluto, then we kind of got into a bit here, like being a couple at Pluto. But what happens if the love doesn't work? If two members have to go their separate ways, like how does that work in a community space like Pluto?
Well, we did touch on that with the the Connection Council.
There is the Connection Council, yeah.
So I can only count on like a small number on my hand of like how many times it's happened, but I think that's the beauty of a place that, and this is like what we learned from like indigenous tribes, right? Where it shouldn't feel like you need to be embarrassed for trying something. I actually think the sign of a healthy community is when people are trying and when there's friction. And there's been friction, and I don't take it as a bad thing. It would be more concerning if people were just avoiding each other altogether. That would be sound the alarms. So for Pluto to be a place where people can meet, try things on, explore new interests, to date, and I think that's where the integrity piece is still so important. We're anchoring in our core values of the first one being lived integrity, that should you choose to engage with someone, that we still hold high standards in this community of, how men treat women and women treat men, how men treat men and women treat women, like across the board, that respect and that foundation of, we all still, whether this works out or not, it's all our planet. So I'll see you here tomorrow.
Yeah. And the nice thing is we're all still part of the community. and ostracization. We don't need to pariah anyone. No one has to be like thrown out. Actually, if anything, this is a space that you should feel held going through some of those difficult, uncouplings, which do happen, right? It's bound to happen, just unfortunately. But as you said, that's just part of the experimentation, and I think it's something we're still a bit early. I would say we haven't seen a lot of it, but I will be curious as we grow and or as I guess just time goes on. And more people get together and more people, break apart, unfortunately, what that will feel like in our community. Because what if there is other romantic interest between those members and other members, right? Like, how is that navigated? Does it, is it navigated?
The natural sorting.
The natural sorting.
Everybody finds their person.
Right? Because it kind of does happen, right? It's like, I remember first year university, right? Like, everyone's excited to be there. You're kind of just, meeting people constantly. And part of that might be hooking up with some people. But eventually, by year 2, year 3, like the sorting has the dust has settled, and everyone's now coupled off, right? And I mean, and you still see those other people, they're still part of your lives. And here, we're not like a school of 10, 20, 30,000 people. Like we're right now only 200 people, so it's much more intimate. Yeah, and I guess it's just more of a curiosity than anything, because I don't think we have much to say as to how it's going.
Yeah, we don't have a crystal ball and we can't predict the future, but I do think this is where having core values is so important, that those should just be steering people towards, again, why I think integrity is such an important one, that if someone, and again, this doesn't need to be romantic, this could be in any relationship where when things fall apart, it doesn't mean there has to be spite, there has to be resentment, that we can still just wish the best for one another. And the integrity of that is, and this is also what would contribute to any flourishing, is just that shared sentience, which is another one of our core values, where we're still connected, so why not wish the absolute best for one another?
Yeah. There's a beautiful word in English, compersion, which I know comes from more the polyamory culture, but I actually think it's a wonderful word in that it really gets to the heart of wishing the best for someone independent of one's own needs. If you break down the word in its pure definition, it just means I wish you the absolute best. I celebrate your happiness independent of my needs.
Totally.
And I think that's beautiful. I think that's actually the definition of interdependency. It's you're no longer codependent on that person to make you feel a certain way. Like my version of self-worth and self-love is independent of how what you're doing.
Correct.
I need to garner that and cultivate that on my own, but I still wish for you the best, and I really do. And I mean, I feel like as a community, a lot of that's just to do with are we really regulated? Do we feel like we're co-regulating ourselves? Are we learning these lessons,
Yeah, I mean, great point. And I think that actually is something that I've noticed a lot at Pluto, of the good gossip, right? Of how much people are just constantly talking good shit about each other. Like, oh man, that was such a great workshop that Sid hosted, or wow, Jackie really, held incredible space last night, or there's just always I'm just in the background, I just hear people celebrating one another.
Yeah.
So there already is this energy of compersion, if you will. And I feel that, where I truly know you and I just care so much about the well-being of everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's really felt.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, the vibes are there, and hopefully the values are the foundation in which people really, subscribe to. We do our best to curate that community. We're trying to make sure, there is a value alignment if you're joining this space. And then I guess just to bring it full circle, someone entering this space that are single and that do have an intention to meet someone, the benefit of a place like Pluto being that you're really coming into a place where you just get to be yourself, and you get to grow as you intend to, and be among others that also are doing that and value that.
Yeah, and that actually reminded me of something I wanted to mention before. I really believe like longevity in a relationship comes from authenticity as well. I think a lot of relationships fall apart when someone's been showing up with a persona the whole time, a version of themselves that they're actually not, that doesn't reflect their authenticity. And it's that house of cards that eventually over time can come crashing down because they've been putting on an act for too long.
Yeah.
So it's the foundation for, I think, any good relationship does start with bringing that authentic self.
Yeah.
Because this is me and I love me and this is who you get to see and be a part of. And on that same part where I was talking about, you know, you can only meet someone as deeply as you met yourself.
Yeah.
I think that really applies in a romantic context too, so that it's like what you see is what you get, and there are not going to be any surprises. Or ideally, I think there's always going to be some as we learn more about ourselves and as relationships are such amazing mirrors. But at least we're not, you know, putting on an act. And Pluto really is a place where it's the only act you should put on is the one trying to be as closely to that authentic self you can be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to that, like, you know, the parts that we're insecure about, the unlovable parts, it's, you know, facing those. And oftentimes it can connect people. And yeah, truly living, you know, it's funny actually, isn't this just the way, like when we get into those fears, get into those anxieties and doubts and we face them head on, realize like, you know, it's us that blew them up, you know, it's our narratives that made them so grand, you know, and in reality, you know, if like most people care for us and inclusive of all that.
And can love those parts of us.
And can love those parts
more than
of
we
ourselves.
can even do it. And that's also why community is so beautiful, where if you shared, you know, your deepest, darkest, most unlovable parts, other people would probably be like, but we love you, Graeme. And like that, if that's part of you, we love that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, and that innately is healing, because that's a healing a wound, right? Healing a story, healing a negative or limiting belief. And in so doing, creating space again. And isn't it funny when we create space that suddenly like the universe just kind of happens for us, you know, someone just sort of pops into our life just at that right time. And we're like, oh, this is a very serendipitous
Yeah.
connection.
The energetics of it are, I mean, that's a whole other chapter on the metaphysical nature of how, you know, the law of attraction works and manifesting, that we could probably do a good episode on that. Yeah. I feel like we've got enough magical moments in our history now that would validate one. So
well, I think that's towards, do we feel complete?
Yeah, I think we covered all the bases for why Pluto is a great place for connection, why meeting a partner here, there's a good likelihood, but it's not the sole focus. And I think just maybe the final thing on that is just the patience aspect of it in life and in love and romance. But being patient, being patient is very sexy.
Yeah. But
B, it's also what I think, you know, I like to always come back to these metaphors on like gardening, right? Like we plant our seeds, like we water our gardens, we tend to them, and then the beauty may emerge. And it's not something you just like plant the seed, where's my fucking flower? And these things take time. And
was that a metaphorical flower?
Sure. Yes.
Is this a PG podcast? I guess we haven't decided yet.
I should probably figure that out soon. You know what I'm getting at though, right? Where it's like any connection, any especially meaningful ones, it's important to be patient with them, to give them time to breathe and to become what they're naturally meant to be, rather than us trying to force what we think they ought to be.
Yeah. And
again, why I think, you know, the filtration and the membership, the curation part, we're just sort of doing that first step for people to try and create a place where that safety emerges, where there is fertile soil. But then the rest of the connections and relationships that are to emerge, it's not up to us.
Yeah.
We can just give the conditions and hope that, you know, the values and the leadership and the council and all these other things we put in place help make it all happen and emerge in a healthy manner.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, I mean, you have the intention, and perhaps that intention involves romance, but the lifelong wisdom and I guess like learning is just why, you know, these fundamental things like patience, you know, presence, trust are important, and why it's important to embody that first and foremost before that great love will be the flower that grows from the garden.
That's right.
That feels like a good spot to end it.
I'd say.
Well, Adam Lewis and the rest of you, thank you. Appreciate your time today. Thank you, Sid, again, being over there and doing his thing. Looking great.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
Till next time.